Today, I'm taking you with me to do a street photography challenge. I'm challenging myself to shoot with only the Lumix GX80 and the Lumix 14-140mm lens, but with a catch. I'm only allowed to shoot with the lens extended to the maximum. So that means shooting exclusively with a full frame equivalent focal length of 280mm. Let's go. Photography is a skill, and skills can be trained, and the best practice, in my opinion, is to just do it again and again and again. The more you do it, the better you'll become, at least in my experience. But sometimes, too much repetition can also lead to stalling. I sometimes feel a little stuck in a spot in my photography, dissatisfied with my current work and just a little aimless. It's in these kind of moments that I think challenges can be a very useful tool. It's an easy way to mix things up and free up some space in the head by sort of reshuffling the cards. When stuck in a creative dead end, I've found that simply accepting that and pivoting my focus to something else for a while can be quite effective to regain focus. And themed challenges is a pretty fun way to do just that. I've recently begun rethinking my stance on certain focal lengths. I'm very much a 35mm guy who dabbles in 40mm but usually avoids 50mm and anything wider than 35. But while thinking about changing things up a bit, just a little, I realised that it could be quite fun actually to change things up a little more than just a bit and actually play around with some really long focal lengths. And seeing as I have this 14-140mm lens for my Lumix, which offers an insane range, I decided that this was a challenge I would like to try. And so one sunny morning, I hopped on my bicycle and got going.
Everyone was watching us from the very first night. The curtain was always up, and we shared all our secrets.
I didn't really have a proper plan, a route to follow. I just looked for anything interesting in the city centre and then started off here. I was eyeing the rounded gate at the end of the road here, which could act as a frame for people passing by. With the backlight from the sun, I was hoping to achieve photographs that concentrate more on shapes and their relation to each other. I camped out here for a bit and shot many varieties of similar shots. Here is what I got. This is an okay start, I'd say. I actually quite like this one. I think what I enjoy here is how the shape of the walls splits the photo into halves, and each half has their own unique character looking in opposite directions, which almost looks like they're mirroring each other. Here, I just kind of stood around looking for compositions. Mind you, it's really hard to imagine the composition when shooting with such a long focal length. I always had to look through the viewfinder to remind myself of how tight my frame is, which might mean stepping a couple steps further behind to gain some distance. Despite the lack of photographic potential in this spot at first sight, I ended up getting a shot that I think is pretty decent. I like how the main two shapes here are the lamppost and the person on their bike. What I like here is that the background is so dark so that the frame really concentrates on just the two bright elements.
This is really tricky. Let's see if I can find some more frames or something. I think that makes it easier.
What I meant here is that it could be helpful to not look for subjects but for frames and then just wait for the subject to enter the frame.
Okay, I think I have my next idea. No idea if it's going to be good, but, you know, let's try it out.
Here, I decided to use the windows of the building on the other side of the road as a frame and see what happens. This felt a bit like fishing, waiting for someone to come into frame. Here are some of my favourites. This one worked out pretty nicely, I find, with the window framed in this very straight and symmetrical manner, only to be broken up by random subjects coming into frame. This one is also quite nice, though it seems like the type of photograph that I've seen many times before, so maybe not the most unique and creative shot, but it works. Here, I walked into the old town where the streets get quite tight. This makes it hard to find sunlight, which for the kind of photography I was aiming for was not ideal, so I didn't really find much. However, once I turned around a corner, I spotted something with lots of potential.
I might have found something that could work. We need to go over that way, and maybe we can find a nice shape. So I was thinking, if somebody walks through that thing there, I don't think anyone's actually going to sit down at that bench, so it's not worth waiting for that. I think that would be over camping. So I had an idea, the idea was executed. Don't know until I edit it if it actually is good, but I got the idea, so let's see.
I think these turned out really cool. I love the simple shapes that the architecture adds to the frame, and then all I needed to wait for was someone to walk through that tunnel to get that shadowy figure framed within a frame within a frame. I shot multiple variations. I think that someone sitting on the bench would maybe elevate the photo just a bit more, but this is already pretty decent. By the way, in case you have a couple pretty decent shots, here's a reminder to put them up on your portfolio. You don't have a portfolio? Well, it's about time then that you get to work on Squarespace. If you want to make a website, I recommend using Squarespace. I myself have been using Squarespace for over 5 years at this point, and it's perfect for people like me who are creatives but not web developers. They're an all-in-one platform, so with your subscription you can make a website, host your content, register your own domain name, sell products, track analytics, and much more. They have this lovely, intuitive drag-and-drop editor called Fluid Engine, which is so easy to use and lets you customize the layout and design of your page. If you need some help when getting started, you can start off with one of the many professional and beautifully designed templates, which you can then customize to suit your own style. Or you can work with Squarespace's AI, which enables you to build a website in minutes by describing it and answering a few questions. All in all, what I think Squarespace is great at is combining creative freedom with ease of use, which I really appreciate. Try it out for yourself. You can head to squarespace.com for a 14-day free trial, and then when you're ready to launch your website, you can go to squarespace.com/Crawford to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you so much to Squarespace for continuously supporting the channel. Next, I just walked around the corner and this thing happened that is always a joy in this kind of photography. Unexpectedly, I already found another interesting frame to shoot and some people who walked through and added that sense of life to the photos. Here are the photos, and I think these turned out pretty cool. I think this one is my favourite. In all of these, what I enjoy is the very selective framing that frames a shadowy subject within multiple frames that barely reveals the whole scene. You know, thanks to the GoPro footage, where this was shot, but just by looking at the photos, I at least could not tell that this is just a random passage next to the church here. Here I tried to get the same shot but from the other side. These, however, didn't turn out as interesting in my opinion. Maybe the backlighting from the sun made the other one more interesting than this one.
Okay, we're walking back that way because I have the hope that we'll find more frames over there. But yeah, I have to say this framing technique I think is kind of what I need to go for today, at least for now. It feels like one of the compositions with this challenge at 280mm that is somewhat effective. I'm back at the spot we were at before and somebody is sitting on the bench now, so I tried again and I got quite lucky. I think it worked.
Here is the shot, and I think this one is also really cool, though I'm not sure if I really prefer it over the first version. The lighting is different, much stronger and harder now, but we have two subjects in frame, one on the bench and one in the tunnel, which creates a bit of tension, which I think is cool. Also, I love how the shadow sort of points at the subject, but the reason why I'm not sure whether this is actually any better is that I'm uncertain whether I might prefer the simpler and softer lighting of the first version. Not sure, but I'm happy that I have both. Hello, Editing Teo here. Just so you know, in case you like my editing in this video or my color grading in general, I teach this stuff on Patreon in Lightroom tutorials, color grading tutorials and all that. You can check it out via the link in the description. Just a little reminder.
What do we have over here? Ah, this is where I am. This is where I started. Okay, I think I've gone enough circles here. Let's actually go somewhere else.
Here I found a spot with some potential and just sat here waiting for the right subject to enter my frame. Again, fishing for photographs, I suppose. Here we go. These are the couple shots that I think worked out alright. We're going for the shadowy subject kind of shots again, which is very common, but for a good reason. It can make for some interesting compositions. I think I quite like this one actually, with the subject closer to me and hence much bigger in frame. Next I was on a busy street where I decided to try to play with reflections. This is something many photographers love to play with, I think, but I've actually never tried it out. It's a fun and effective technique to shoot abstract photos in this kind of an environment. So here are a couple results. I'm just going to show you a bunch, all of which I think range from alright to pretty decent. This one, for example, I think turned out pretty cool. I like this one in particular with the addition of the shiny reflection in the shot.
Yeah, found one very random reflection.
I have to say, this game of finding these reflections in the first place is really fun. These shots I think turned out pretty cool. What I enjoy here as an addition is how the wall inside the building adds an additional texture to the blurry reflections. These sort of look like photographic versions of abstract paintings. Here, I spotted this guy with a vibrant red jacket, and he was walking in this typical grandpa walking style, which gave me the idea to get a close-up of his hands. I think this one turned out really cool. I love the simplicity of the shot. It's split into three colours, red, white and brown, which is both the background and his skin tones, I'd say. They're fairly close by. This gives the shot the clarity to make it work, I find. It pops with the red and white elements while staying calm and concentrated on the simple subject, the hands. And with that, I already came to an end of the session. I was feeling pretty satisfied at this point. I got one more shot of some cyclists coming down the road. However, I think the photo isn't really particularly notable, but overall, I think that was some decent practice. I activated a different part of my photographic brain, if you will, and did something different than I usually do. So I'd like to recommend this to you in case you feel like you could need some new inspiration or just some help to get out of a creative rut. Switch things up, come up with some challenge that will make you do something else for a change. It doesn't have to be street photography at 280mm, it can be anything, but for this day I decided to shoot in the streets with an unnecessarily long focal length, and I think that was great, and I hope you enjoyed joining me. Before saying goodbye, I would like to say a massive thank you to the lovely people supporting me and my work on Patreon. Thank you so much to each one of you. If you are interested in Lightroom presets, color grading tutorials and stuff like that, you can check out my page via the link in the description. Also, by the way, I have a print shop in case that is of interest to you, also in the description. With that said, I hope to see you again soon. Until then, goodbye.